Martin Houston, I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Doing great, Ryan. Glad to be on.
Martin, there's a lot of different things that I want to get your reaction on. And let me start with the breaking news today. Justin Fields, NCAA, declaring him eligible immediately. I'd love to kind of hear your breakdown of maybe your analysis of this.
Well, congratulations to the young man, but I think it's bad for college football. And the reason it's bad for college football is because of the idiocracy of pretty much, to me, a worthless governing body called the NCAA. They have no consistency. They have no rules. That they violate their own rules consistently. And when whatever is supposed to be the governing body or what is supposed to keep things between the lines, when that is out of whack, ultimately everything else gets out of whack. And, I don't know if they're afraid of what this may have led to, with it being an African-American quarterback and him having had some racial issues. It doesn't go with everything else they have ruled on. And until a rule changes, this is the way my philosophy is, Ryan. You fight to change rules, and if you think that players should be immediately eligible, then you fight to change those rules. But until then, everyone abides by the rules, or you rule in the meantime with consistency. And the NCAA does not do that. There are young men who this year and last year around the same thing, not a big name, no Al Sharptons, no race thing, that were told no. And the only reason they were told no was because the arbitrary NCAA did so. And to me, that is a problem in and of itself. But the other part, Ryan, is I think players should have some flexibility and freedom around it, around some transfers and things like that, but it can't be a free-for-all. And the reality of it is, you don't give me this that he was feeling picked upon and there was some racial issue and things like that is why he left Georgia. I don't buy that story. I believe Justin Fields transferred because he couldn't beat out the guy that was there. Whether he had a fair shake or not, I don't know. But if he was playing and starting, he would be at Georgia, and I don't think he should have been ruled immediately eligible unless you're going to go back and apply that to every single case that's been brought before you for 2019 and change the rule.
Martin, what does this do for the future? Because I know I've talked about it, and I know that you've got some strong opinions on it as well. But this precedent that they'll set for the NCAA, what do you think this does in the future?
It totally neuters the coaches. They have no ability to manage their team, manage their rosters, and lead their teams. It totally puts all of the control in the players. What we tend to do as society is when something is out of balance, we tend to go all the way to the other extreme versus finding a happy medium. Do players need to have some freedoms, Ryan? Absolutely. When a coach leaves, when I sign early and a coach leaves, or when there's changes in the administration or changes in the system where there's legit reasons of why a player chose a school, a major drops, all those things, those players should have some freedom to move. But when you move and you change strictly for the sake of playing time, you should have to sit out a year. You should be free to move, or there should be some restrictions around it. It can't be a free-for-all because now, let's just say this at Alabama. If we may have a classic case where Anoma may have stayed at Alabama because this was an argument that Nick Saban made to him. Okay, son, it didn't go the way you wanted it to in 2018, but if you leave and go, whether you go to Maryland, whether you go to Notre Dame, whether you go to wherever your school of choice is, you're going to have to sit out a year. Why not give us a chance for you to earn playing time? And if you don't, we'll redshirt you, and you'll be in our program, in our system, getting better, and we have a plan for you versus going to school, starting over, and maybe getting that chance and sitting out a year there when you don't know if they have a plan for you at this point. Well, that he could go, I'm not worried about that because wherever I go, I'm going to be immediately eligible. Now the kids can put their name in without having that conversation with the coach, and now they have no threat of having to sit out. It totally neuters the coach and the ability for programs to be built, especially in this generation, in this age where it's give me what I want, give it to me yesterday. I'm not willing to wait, and I don't want to wait.
We're talking right now to Martin Houston, former fullback at the University of Alabama, and as we continue to cut the conversation, I said this earlier.
Ryan, can I ask you a question before you go?
Yeah.
What was their justification for Justin Fields being?
They didn't give one. We got to remember, this is the bureaucrats. They don't have to give one.
So they just, okay, are they going to make the kid that left Ohio State immediately eligible?
Well,
Miami?
and that's the part. Tate Martell, they're watching it. I mean, that's the one.
Wow.
It will be.
It'll be a mess if he's not root eligible.
Well, because and Martin, I just think that you're setting up, and I said this earlier, and I'll say it again. It's days like today is where you go back and appreciate Jalen Hurts, that he took a backup role. He lost a year of eligibility for a backup role, and he didn't cry. Other than that 7-minute time span in August in Media Day, other than that moment, he had complete control of the situation.
Yeah.
And you got to listen. You may be the biggest Jalen Hurts disliker out there, but you gotta respect him in that moment of time, the way that he handled himself, and didn't go crying like all these quarterbacks. Some of these quarterbacks transfer like crazy, and it will continue. It will increase now because there's no accountability if you have the immediate eligibility. Yeah, there's no consequences.
There's no consequences. And Ryan, I would even say Jalen Hurts mishandled the 7-minute with the way I see things played out. I think he was tired of us and everyone speaking for him and no one asking him. And with Coach Saban's way of managing it, Ryan, you and I both said that they should have had Jalen Hurts out in front of a media.
Well, they blocked him.
Camera, they blocked him, and they blocked him, and they blocked him.
Yeah.
So could you imagine if you had to listen for 6 months to everybody say what you were going to do, and it's not even on. It wasn't even from the way he played out the season. It wasn't even on his mind. But we all had, including me, was saying what he should have done. And now you have kids who they can just. How do you put this back in the box?
Because
you can't.
Because here, let me just say that I'm the next quarterback, okay? I'm the next quarterback that's going to be leaving somewhere, which it's hard to me to kind of even, have a fantasy that I'm quarterback. I don't know if I can throw to the back of the truck here, okay? But let me – so I began to claim this, okay, and forget about the racial slurs, okay? We've talked about that. Sure, those were wrong for the Georgia baseball player to do what he did. But what's going to keep me from now saying, well, that happened to me? Or forget about it. You don't even have to have that excuse. You can look at the NCAA and you can say hardship for any reason. If this is the precedent, it's going to open up, as you've said, the floodgate, the Pandora's box, whatever you want to say. The NCAA, I don't know how you could put it back in the box. I think today you've opened it up and you've kind of let it out of control.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And once you make an arbitrary decision on something that that is not concrete, Ryan, and it violates your current rules, there is no way that. How do you tell the next person's reason no? In other words, the professors at this school mistreat me as a student athlete. Okay. So I want to go to a school where they treat the athletes better. How do you tell that person no? Yeah, let's be real. Justin Fields may have been called a racial slur. He was, because the player and all that stuff is gone.
Right. You had discipline situation. It
happened.
Yeah, it happened.
He's disciplined and all that. It happened. Did that in any way impact him being there? If he had gotten to play, would he still be making this decision? I mean, I teach my kids, Ryan, this world has changed a lot, and it's come a long way. But I can't take my kids anywhere where they're not going to have that as part of it. If you don't think that there's going to be some people that don't use racial slurs at Ohio State, whether he knows it or don't know it, anyway, it's just to me it's a bad decision because it's not in line with what you currently do, in that you're not doing it for all parties involved. And I'm not definitely a long way from being a socialist, but in this type of situation, when you have multiple players out there applying and you choose one, it's just, I think it's going to be bad for college football in the long run because they're going to try to put it back in the box, and you can't now.
Martin, we go back to Nick Saban. He said this to a private booster club. He also said it publicly at a press conference. They want to get back to the Alabama way, the Alabama standard. What does that mean to you when Nick Saban says we've got to get back to playing up to the standard and back in the Alabama way?
Well, Ryan, last year Nick Saban made a decision because they missed the standard in recruiting, fell down to 5 or 6 based on which rating service you looked at. So that standard was off. So he overcorrected to get back to that standard with going after a lot of coaches with the recruiting. And it looked like that was the right choice with the class Alabama just signed. The problem is this year, who helped him teach that standard? He didn't have a Kirby Smart. He didn't have a Jeremy Pruitt. He didn't have Burton Burns or Bobby Williams on the field coaching those kids this year. So who taught those kids where the standard was? There's a lot of really good coaches out there, Ryan, that push players to certain levels and different things. But no one has consistently pushed players and maintained the level that Alabama did. And I think Nick Saban was communicating to us, hey, the coaches that I had last year could not coach to the Alabama standard and the Alabama way. Therefore, the players did not perform week in, week out consistently to the Alabama standard. Now, I didn't think that was going to catch up with us this year, and it's hindsight 2020. But I believe that's what he's communicating with us. That's why he goes back out, Ryan, and he gets a Sal Sunseri. He gets a Charles Kelly, who is not an Alabama coach, but where has he been? He spent time with Jeremy Pruitt at Florida State. He spent time with Jeremy Pruitt at Tennessee. And then he's getting older guys who have been in the system who know how to coach up to that standard. And that is what, if you don't know what a mark is, you can't lead anybody else to the mark. And he had a bunch of guys last year that didn't know what a mark was, and therefore they couldn't lead to that mark.
Well, I just find it kind of unique because I think you can go a million different ways with this. And he even admitted, because he said we fixed the problem. We don't fix the problem unless you got a problem. And so he's even
right.
admitting that he's fixed the problem. And I also find, I don't think it's just coaches. I don't think it's all just players. I think it's a combination of everybody, probably even inside that support room. Complacency sets in. It's a mentality. And I think it's across the board. It's the way that you approach the offseason. There's a lot of different things that you can do. Spring training is going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of great competitions. But I think the one most intriguing part is to see if they can get that kind of swagger back a little bit, to see exactly where they want to be offensively. Where do they want to be defensively? Because Pete Golding is your defensive coordinator. Even though it's unofficially, it's not been announced, he is.
Right. To your point, though, is where is that standard? And a word that we throw out a lot, but he didn't use that word necessarily. But what was the identity of Alabama football last year? I mean, did Nick Saban Did it seem like Nick Saban almost quit in that game from a coaching standpoint?
It's hard
from
to
what we've become accustomed to.
It's hard to say that, but I think there's some validity to it.
Well, but guess what? Guess where I think that stemmed from? I think that stemmed from the fact that Nick Saban found himself in a situation where, for the first time, what he's always known and what he's always been able to do is make a slight adjustment on offense because his defense could always get the job done. He himself may not knew how to coach out of what was happening in front of him. For the first time, a team could dominate his defense, and he was offensive heavy, and he didn't know how to coach in that situation. What his go-tos were no longer go-tos, and it was almost like he was like, wow, I can't coach. To me, and like I said, it's 2020, hindsight 2020, but did Nick Saban find himself in a position that he was not even comfortable coaching in that Clemson game? And that's what it looked like to me, because Nick Saban coaches to the last second, winning or losing, and he stopped coaching, it looked like, in the third quarter.
It's going to be – I mean, it's a lot of mentality. But if you slip down in those bad habits, can you fix it overnight?
Well, I mean, I don't think this is necessarily a slip down into it. I think if it's a slip, Ryan, it's harder to get out of. I think he made a choice last year and thought he could win with that choice. And I think he's just simply correcting a choice and going back to what he's always done, and got guys in here that he believes can do that. The talent is still at Alabama. There was no development of that talent as a whole last year. Very few players got developed at a higher level, but he brought in coaches with a lot of years of experience, a lot of years of development, and a lot of years of working with him combined. Just think, his outside linebacker coach, if that's where Sal ends up coaching, and his defensive line coach, Ryan, has more years of coaching than his two co-defensive coordinators had in living last year.
Oh, wow. Wow, great point.
60-something years of coaching experience between those two guys, and our two coaches last year combined was probably 65. So, I mean, yes, he can correct it in one year, not overnight, but fortunately our schedule, I think, is going to allow us to get back to that place by the end of next year.
You know, and we look at the different things. You did this earlier this week on your show because I saw a Twitter question that popped up, also Facebook, and I know we've done it here. Your biggest concern going into spring is what?
I think it's the meshing of the staff and the players to create depth. I think Alabama's is talented. You don't lose the talent that you've had. I mean, you don't lose the talent. But you did lose a year of development, and can they get it back in one spring? And the meshing of the staff and the meshing of the players is going to be critical to that, because Ryan, literally, there's no position other than the starting quarterback that I don't have concerns about. Will Lewis and Allen come back full speed? Who's going to be the other inside linebacker? Who's going to replace Q and Bug? What's going to be the makeup of the defensive backfield? How are we going to set up the offensive line? And then the quarterback is good, but who's his backup? And then who's going to step up at running back? Do we have leaders on offense? The only position I guess really and truly would be the wide receiver position and the starting quarterback. But he even has to grow in his ability to trust what he sees, but then be willing to go to the next step if he actually misread it because of them tricking him. But it's a lot. It's going to be a fun spring.
Oh yeah, there's tons, and I mean, you got to get Leatherwood out of position. You got to move him to left tackle. I mean, he's out of position at guard. He's not a guard, but they didn't have anywhere else to play him. because of Jonah Williams and Jedrick Wills anchoring the tackles. You flip him to, and then you begin to ask the question, the one thing that I think we're still learning about, Deontay Brown. Will he be able to come back? Do you flip Matt Womack from a tackle to a guard? And then you got to answer the all-important question of, do you trust a true freshman to be your signal caller? Is somebody else ready to take that center position?
And Ron, what do you do with Evan Neal if he's as good as advertised?
Oh Lord,
he's
yeah,
6'7", 6'7.5", 350 pounds, and I mean, if he's as advertised, do you put Leatherwood or even move Jedrick Wills? To me, Jedrick Wills potentially to center or closer to the ball, because think about what happened to him down the stretch. When we got to the big games, man, you don't really think about this, but he has to, with Tua being a left-handed quarterback, people started putting some of their best rushers on him, and he was looking at them, so he couldn't see the ball, and he couldn't hold his water. That's why we had those penalties, and they were critical penalties, especially the one in the national championship game that took a score off the board pretty much and gave us a field goal. Do you move him closer to center or even try him at center because he's so athletic? But you almost have to have a left tackle playing right tackle. Jedrick has athletic ability, but does he have the focus and the mental ability to do it?
And this is a show for you, okay? This is free. This is a show for you to do Monday or Tuesday, okay? You ready?
Got it.
Ready. Roman Harper came on. We're talking about 11-year NFL veteran yesterday on this program. Did you hear his conversation?
I did not.
Okay. This is, for your audience, this might be a week's worth of content. You ready? Roman Harper said on this program, I said, what do you see in the young superstar quarterback in Tuscaloosa? He went through several different characteristics that he likes. He said his decisions, the way, it just went through different things that was great about it. He said, but the one area that I want to see his toughness improve.
Yes.
He said, and that's something that you get respect out of your teammates. Now, for those out there that argue, listen, Tua took some major hits. His offensive line protected him at times, and they also did not protect him at times. He took a lot of punishment. A lot of times he was asked to do things. But Roman said that he'd like to see that's one area that he wants to see that improve.
And I can see that. That was questioned, Ryan. That actually came up several times during the year on the Blitz. And so my audience, I know, inside the locker room, asked it. I'm not sure. I think Gary may have asked that same question. So several people were asking it, and it is something that, as you say, wins your team over. But it's kind of an interesting thought, Ryan. He needs to be viewed as tough, being tougher, but he also played with an injury.
He did
most of the season.
Sure.
So it's kind of a catch-22. He doesn't get he gets some bum injuries that you're like, come on, Tua, you got to push through it. But then he doesn't seem to get the same amount of credit for playing with the knee brace and working through that. He doesn't seem to get as much credit for that being an example of being tough because of the small things that seem to have got him off the field. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, well, hey, and listen, we're talking about 11-year NFL veteran. He knows what it takes to get respect in that locker room, and certainly you do as well. And so it was pointing out, those former player perspectives. Martin, I got to run. Let me throw it back to you. Talk about your agency here at Alabama One.
Alabama One insurance agency, fully owned by Alabama One. We are a full-service insurance agency, home, auto, boats, motorcycles, renters insurance, commercial insurance, life insurance. If you need it insured, we can help you. And one of the things that we always like to say and talk about, Ryan, is having peace of mind that what you need to protect is properly protected. Not all insurance policies are created and written equal, so be careful If they just say, hey, I can save you money, they can, but they may not be properly protecting you. We'll talk you through every step of the way, every part of the policy, and you can go to sleep and wake up every day with the peace of mind that you're properly insured. Compare, bundle, and save at Alabama One Insurance. You can find us online at alabamaoneinsurance.com. That's alabamaoneinsurance.com. Or give us a call at 205-342-0112. Remember, Alabama One Insurance, the one you turn to for your one source for all your insurance needs.
Martin Houston, have an amazing weekend, my friend. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
You do likewise, and roll tide.